Today we are going to make some Greek naan wedges, so some homemade naan with some Greek flavored beef and some sautéed veggies like zucchini, peppers, onions, all that delicious, and a little tzatziki sauce. And then we're going to make some homemade Oreos that we'll bake up and then stuff and everything like that. So let's first start by making our sourdough naan so that it can sit and the dough can hydrate. Then we'll make our cookies and then we'll get on there. So let's get this show on the road. I'm going to grab a little teeny spatula over here real quick. I realize I didn't set one out. We're going to start off with our, for our naan here, using a cup of sourdough discard. So I might steal some from two different of my starters on here. So I'm going to use about a half a cup or so from Gus here because he's pretty hefty. And then we're going to use some from Jacques.
What's Gus short for?
Augustus Gustavus. He's got a very, very formal name. Gus, or he's just the fat mouse from Cinderella because he's so cute. Everybody loves Gus. It's like my spirit mouse. If I was a mouse, I would be Gus. Okay, we're going to add in our whole cup of our discard here. And this does not have to be, again, it doesn't have to be an active starter, but it can be active. So if you have it fed up and you have ample amount, you can definitely use active starter because we're not actually going to be using it for any of the leavening process, but it's a great way to get rid of discard, especially if you have a whole bunch of it. Slide this right over here. And now we're going to add in 6 tablespoons of water, which is the same as 90 milliliters. And then 1/4 cup of olive oil. Let's see, I gotta not cover up the measurements on here.
Angel made your chicken and wild rice soup.
Oh, I hope you like that. That's one of my favorite soups. It's just so good. And I love a good wild rice. It's one of those things that my stepdad used to make wild rice for us a lot growing up because he would make it out of a box and that was his like specialty. It was that or hash browns as a side. But I don't know. I just loved it in a soup for it. So I hope yours turned out well. We're going to add in our yogurt here. So that's kind of like the special ingredient in naan that makes it so good for a flatbread is it has yogurt in it, which keeps it really moist and tender and supple for a flatbread. So we're going to add in about 1/2 cup. I'm going to make sure I've got my plain yogurt here. It would not be good if I put in vanilla yogurt. You can also, if you don't have plain yogurt, which a lot of times I don't have, you can use sour cream. That works really well for it. So just about 1/2 cup here. And I'll be about pretty good right there. And then we're going to mix these together. So this is kind of our liquid part of our naan base. And then we're going to add in our baking powder, baking soda, salt, and then last our flour. But I want to make sure I've got this all combined together first. And again, in here, we've got our discard, yogurt, oil, and some water. Get it mixed up. And I'm really just trying to break out any of the chunks that the yogurt will have in there. That way it's fairly kind of incorporated. Okay. Now let's get with our things. We're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of salt, which is the same as 1/2 tablespoon. So we can get that in here. We're going to do 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And then 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And that's going to give this a nice, good like puff up in our little flatbread here. Now, once we actually start mixing this in, we will start to see it reacting with the sourdough discard and the yogurt. So it's going to make a really fluffy base here on it, which will be wonderful. and it will start to grow. You can see it's just starting to get more and more fluffy in there. And once I've got it kind of fairly mixed around, we're going to add in our flour. And we're just going to use 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Although you can definitely use bread flour in this recipe, it doesn't, they're pretty interchangeable. It doesn't really matter for which one. 1, 2, and 3. We'll mix these in, and then we'll give this dough a quick little knead, and then it's just time to let it kind of sit and hydrate. And that's going to give it a better elasticity so that when we go to roll it out and cook it on our skillet, it won't tear during that rolling or stretch and rip. So we'll mix this in, and this is going to give it a little bit of a dry shag. But once we actually get in there and start working it with our hands, it will come together quite nicely. Here. Okay, now I'm just going to take everything off. We'll flip it out on our counter here, knead it up together, and let it sit. So really, really simple on here. And this is not because we're using the baking powder and the baking soda, this cooks up really, really quickly. Like we'll be ready to start cooking it off in 10 minutes. It's like the minimal resting time. It's not like a yeast one where you have all that wait time. And I will say, this is like my preferred naan recipe that I have. Get all of this out. And then knead these guys together. Now, once you get your dough going, it will have just a slight little bit of stickiness to it, but it shouldn't be so sticky that you can't work with it. If it's sticking to your hands too much, then just add a little bit of flour, like a tablespoon more, until it's on there. But it should have a slight tack to where, like when you touch it, it feels a little bit wet. Just going to incorporate all of these little crumbs in so that we get all of that good flour into our naan base. And then we're going to knead it up. And then I'll just cover it with a little bit of plastic wrap to help kind of hydrate it. And then we'll just let it sit on our counter and work with everything else while we wait. Here. Now, again, you want to let this dough sit, because if you see right now, if you try to like roll it out now, it doesn't have the good elasticity to it because the flour hasn't had a chance to hydrate. So it's really, really important to let it sit. After 10 minutes, you can start rolling it out and cutting it. I will say optimal amount of time is 20 minutes is when you get the perfect bit of elasticity to it. Okay. Give it a good couple more kneads. And then we'll knead it again right before we're ready to shape it. But let me grab a little bit of plastic wrap to put over that just to keep it hydrated so the outside doesn't dry out. Put that right up here. And then I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse because they got a little bit of flour on them. And then let's start making our cookies, because before our baking off the cookies won't take any time, but we do need to do a quick little chill on them in the fridge for about 10 minutes, which is kind of perfect. And then we'll bake them off. But for this, we're going to start out. These are going to be the chocolate cookie parts of our Oreos. We're going to start off with 10 tablespoons of butter, which is a stick plus 2 tablespoons. And this is going to make a good amount of Oreos, but this isn't going to make a huge amount of Oreos, but a good, because, you know, the Oreo cookies aren't super big cookies to begin with, but you need 2 cookies to make every sandwich. And you want to use room temperature butter. That way it creams together nicely. But this is why you're also going to need to chill it for about 10 minutes after you've got them on your parchment paper in there. And this is an easy recipe where you don't have to roll it out and cut them, which is always nice. Okay, that's about 2 tablespoons there. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our 10 tablespoons of butter and we are going to add in 1 cup of granulated sugar. So let me grab my sugar over here. And we'll cream these guys together. So I need a whole cup. Bring this guy up. And then we're going to cream the sugar into our butter, and then we're done with our granulated sugar. I'm going to get a spatula out so that we can kind of push this down as we're getting there. But we're going to work it into it until we've got a nice, good little base for it. Perfect. And then we'll add in a teaspoon of baking soda and then a half a teaspoon of baking powder. But first, we want to make sure when we're doing this, we want to make sure it gets all creamed together well for this. And then we also have an egg. You want to make sure your egg has time to kind of come down to room temperature, so it's not just out of the fridge. So I've had mine sitting out for a few minutes now. Once I've got this all in here, we'll add it in there. But make sure your butter and your sugar are completely creamed together before you go to the next step, especially with the butter always tends to like to stick to the side of your bowl. But once it's kind of worked together, we'll get that for it. And this is going to be the base cookie for our Oreos. There we go. Looking pretty good now. Now that we've got kind of a blonde base here, but I'm just going to push down all of the butter, and then we'll add in our egg, and then we'll do our baking powder and our baking soda.
And how many cookies does this make?
This makes, depending on what size you roll them out, it makes about 20 cookies. So like Oreos, now these are a bit bigger than the like classic Oreos that I get there. But if you make them a little smaller, a little bit bigger, you could probably stretch them out too as well. We're going to add in 1 egg. There we go. Put this right over here. And then we're going to cream the egg into our mixture here. And once that's incorporated, we'll add in our salt, baking soda, baking powder, and then our cocoa powder and flour. It's pretty simple. Now, the main difference is, so Oreos, if you have, a real Oreo, it's a very dark color. And that's because it uses black cocoa powder. But you can use regular cocoa powder, which is what I'm using today because I don't have black cocoa powder. But it's essentially the same flavor profile. You're just not going to get that really dark color to it. Okay. Mix these guys around. I'm going to just take off a little bit of that on my spatula here. Okay. Let's get our baking powder, baking soda, and salt in this. We're going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda. There we go. And then we're going to add in a half a teaspoon of baking powder. And they'll both kind of work together to give these a nice rise. Set these right over here. And then we're going to add in just a pinch of salt You don't need a whole lot, but you're going to want a little bit to bring out some of that richness. So it's about a fourth a teaspoon of salt on there. Let's cream these two ingredients into our butter, egg, and our sugar mixture until it's nice and incorporated. And then we will add in our cocoa powder and our flour next. And then we're done with this base part of our cookie. I'm going to first push down all of my butter and sugar here. Now the next part is our flour and our cocoa powder. And the cocoa powder in the recipe, as same with like when you're making brownies, replaces part of the regular flour that you would in, when you're baking. So it actually kind of stand in the place. It takes up some of that body. There we go. So we're going to use a half a cup of cocoa powder and 1 1/4 cups of regular flour. Now with this, let me do this one. Again, I'm just using regular cocoa powder, but if you really want that nice dark color of a traditional one, that is black cocoa powder that you need to use. So we're going to add in a half a cup of cocoa powder. And then 1 1/4 cups of flour. We'll cream this all together, and that will be our cookie dough. And then we'll make our frosting to go in the inside in just a little bit. So 1, and then around a 1/4 cup more. And let's cream these guys in. And then periodically, you'll just need to push that butter down because it's going to want to get, pushed up to the sides of it. Now, you can also use, if you don't have like a stand mixer, this is not one that really works well with a hand mixer, but you could do it in a food processor. Here we go. And I'm going to mix this around, and then we'll cream those together, and then we'll have our base thing where we can start rolling out our little cookies. And what I mean by rolling out is we'll roll them into little balls and press them down, but you don't actually have to cut them out, which is nice. So you don't have to chill the dough and do like a cookie cutter type on that. There. And now we've got a good deep base forming for our cookie. Nice and lovely.
Do you have your recipes posted anywhere?
So we do make all of our lives available on link on our page, so everybody can always rewatch and bake along with me again. I do send out a couple times a month some recipe cards for our members every month that have different recipes that we've cooked recently. And then we are currently working on a cookbook that we hope to have ready by the end of this month if everything goes well on there. So those are kind of the lives are available for everybody, but soon we'll have that cookbook out there as well. Okay, get this through, and then we'll give it one more cream through. Again, I'm just pushing all the butter that likes to kind of stay on the sides sometimes because we want to make sure it gets all mixed in there together well. And then we can start making these cookies. Lovely. And this is a nice, as you can see, it is a rich chocolatey dough. And that is because you have all of that cocoa powder in here with that flour. Push it down. And chocolatey goodness for it. Now, let's get these guys rolled out here and chilling in the fridge for about 10 minutes before we bake them up. These bake up really, really quickly. They only need about 9 minutes in the oven to bake up. So you're going to do about around, and really, depending on how big you want your Oreo, you can do them bigger, but you want about a teaspoon size piece of dough. and then we'll roll them in the balls, and then I'm going to put them out here, and then we'll press them down once I get a bunch rolled out for this.
Are these cookies sourdough?
These are not sourdough cookies. These are just a good old-fashioned Oreo cookie that will be delicious for the kids to have. Trying to replace some of like little snacks for them in their lunches. And they've been wanting some different cookies variety here. Now, this is where if you have a cookie scoop or you want to do it perfectly, that this would be a good way to do it up. I've never been a fan of cookie scoops because the cookie dough never comes out of it for me on a cookie scoop. So I always just grab and eyeball it and then just hope that my eyeballing works well. Now we will push these down to flatten them out, and then we'll chill them after we flatten them out, which allows them to get cool fast. And you just pop them in the fridge, so they don't need to go in the freezer or anything like that. But they go up pretty quickly here. And then we'll press them down to make our little cookies. So not, I feel like homemade Oreos, there's so many different recipes out here. I always like to go for something that's a little bit simpler in the sense it has all the flavors. And the nice thing about these cookies is you don't have to roll out the dough and cut them, which always takes an extra step. Roll out cookies, you typically have to chill the dough, then roll it out and put it on the baking sheet. And it's another set of process. This one, you don't have to do that. So we'll get these guys. And then we will chill them, and then they'll be ready to bake up. And then we'll whip up our frosting, which will be a little bit different than like frosting that I used for my cakes, because the frosting inside, an Oreo cookie is a much denser frosting. And so I'll use a bit more powdered sugar to butter ratio. Plus, I like to do a little bit more vanilla to give that stronger flavor to it. And then a little bit of salt to kind of cut out a little bit of that sweetness.
And is this a double batch or a single batch?
This is a single batch, and it's going to make a good amount of cookies. And I think I made them a little bit smaller than I normally make, but I'm just grabbing here. But it does make about, I want to say, like 2 dozen cookies for this. Now I'm going to push these down for it. It just depends. Whatever I make the first size is what they go for, and that's how big they're going to be. Here. I haven't made these in a while because we've been kind of on a different cookie kick for a while. But these are delicious. Okay, let me get my hands rinsed just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do to help kind of push them down is just I'm going to grab a little square of parchment paper. That way it doesn't stick to me. And then we can kind of get this out. Let me slide this over here. I want to actually do it on a flat surface versus trying to do it on. And then we're just going to go through and essentially just push them down to make our little cookies, just like that. And you see, you kind of just work. You can just do your hand, but I just find I've got this right here so I can push it down fairly evenly with it. And
You get like a little LC stamp.
I know, that would be cute. These are the little press down that they have on the Oreo. Can pretty much have these. It was I remember like back in the when they first like came out, you can get those little like brands for your steak grilling, and I've always wanted one, but at the same time, I'm like, this is something that's so extra and so ridiculous, but I kind of still want one. You can also like brand your bread, and I just think it would be hilarious. Just take it out of the oven and then scorch it. Here. See how cute these guys are going to be. But I will say this method, it's still an extra step, but it's faster than rolling out, cutting out, transferring. So you save some time. It's not like my Swedish gingerbread cookies. I make so much of that dough, and I feel like I roll out cookies for hours. Not as crazy as it was growing up, because we would make like thousands of cookies growing up, and they would last us forever. But look at that, beautiful, cute little Oreo cookies here. And now I'm just going to grab my little thin spatula here to make sure that I have none of them too close to each other. But you see they slide up fairly well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pop these in the refrigerator to chill so that they can kind of get cooling. And they only need to be in there for about 10 minutes. And then we'll bake them up for about 10 minutes. So not too much work on there, but we'll have plenty of cookies here. And this is about half the dough.
And did you put anything on the parchment paper before?
Just plain, good old plain parchment paper here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, like 12. So this is about half of it. So about 12. I'm going to put these in here to chill. I always like to make sure I have an even number there, because when you're making sandwiches, if you have the wrong number, you go up one. I thought I had enough room there. There we go. Yes. Something is blocking this. Okay, one more up. We'll see. I know what I have to do, guys. I put it in there. I have a little jar blocking, so I have to pull the jar out. And we'll get up there. Always a fun moment. Always fun. Now we've got it. Woo! I visually checked, but I did not measure. And you know what a builder says? Measure twice, cut once. Me, I measure. Doesn't matter how many times I measure, it's still going to be wrong when I'm building. So what I say is let the cameraman measure and let the cameraman cut, because then if it's wrong, it's his mistake and not mine. Okay, while we're sitting and letting that, let's get our food going. We'll start sauteing it off. We'll start getting our naan going. Luckily, the rest of this meal is pretty quick and easy because it's just a bunch of sauteed stuff. But we do need a knife. We'll get our onions going. I've got some onions, peppers, zucchini. It's really going to be just a really fresh kind of naan-wich, kind of Greek flavored. I've got some Greek beef stew meat. Now we're going to cook up. We're getting at the end of, should be getting a new shipment from Butcher Box this weekend. And so I'm using up the last of what it is. I was trying to see, will it make me through a whole month? And so far it is. I've got this pack of stew meat left and then another chuck roast. And then we're out. And then I have a couple more packs of fish. And so I was like, you know what? The big pack lasted us really well. I'm going to slice up my onions, kind of like fajita style, nice and thin, so that they can kind of go along our little naan-wich here. Yesterday, we made our little quinoa bowls, and I was told that I did not make enough. They were so good that I was like, I should have made more. And I was like, they turned out really, really well. And I was going to say it was really good. This is the first time I've used the Butcher Box stew meat, but it was really, really good quality.
You have a question? And you think the Butcher Box, it's economical?
So far, I have found for what we were eating and using it is. Now, what I do is because I can get chicken like cheaper and then easier. I don't waste those kind of cheaper proteins on the butcher box because chicken I find and ground beef are really easy to get at your local grocery store for a lot cheaper price. But it's the red meat cuts that are a lot harder to get that are more expensive. So I choose those cuts for it. And then you get your like free, I think we got free New York strips as our like extra thing that we have added on. And so it has saved it in a way because, especially with like doing Amazon Fresh or Publix or Costco, red meat is the most expensive meat on there. And doing this, the quality has been great. I always have it, and a wide variety on there. And they tend to have sales on things. So normally I don't do like the ground beef, but they had a really good sale on ground beef, which was cheaper than my grocery store sale. And that was like an added extra, you can add on extra stuff on top of it. And then you also get bonus points. So every order you get points that you can redeem for free meat and stuff. So far, especially for our family, which we are feeding, 9 people on a daily basis because it's our 7 plus my parents. And I did the big butcher box one. So like the extra large box. And that lasted us a whole month. And yeah, it's worked really well. And the only thing that I've kind of subbed in was some chicken and like chicken breast and some like ground beef or ground like Italian sausage.
And some fish.
And fish. And yes, so yeah, I will say we don't do every meal out of that. We do fish. Although I will say the butcher box scallops were really, really delicious. So we do one of the protein choices we do as scallops because those were really, really good. They were nice big scallops and they were actually cheaper than what I get at the grocery store. So that was on there. Our fish, we do get a seafood box that's delivered and it's called Sea to Table. And I was going through and doing a lot of like kind of picking which seafood box to do. And this Sea to Table was the box that I found that was the best price, but gave me the best variety of fish. A lot of them out there only have like salmon or cod or like two. This one, we've got like 7 different types of fish because we picked the pescatarian package. And I get 2 of those boxes because we're a big family. So we needed kind of 2 of them. And it was cheaper to do the pre-selected package than to have to pick it yourself. But we've loved every bit of fish coming out of that box as well. So we've been pretty happy with it. So there's 2 that I'm excited to try the halibut out of there. And then we're going to do like a salmon sampler from there. Not today. We have salmon from our butcher box because that came in it, but I've switched it up now for our future orders, not to have salmon in that one. But I'll be interested to try that one. But they have like Alaskan king salmon, which is hard to come by. And then they have like the good halibut, which is really hard to come by as well. Okay, we've got our onions in here sauteing up here. We're going to saute up our veggies and then we'll get our naan cooking. Our naan always takes a nice hot minute. So I'm going to actually start rolling that out here in just a second. I'm going to just move this to the side and then wipe this up because I don't want any cocoa powder on my naan. Chocolate naan is not what I'm looking forward to. It's like the dessert. Have you ever had those dessert egg rolls? I remember the first time it was in like grade school and somebody brought in like chocolate egg rolls and I was like, this just does not work. I do not like them. If I'm in an egg roll, I want it to be savory and filled with cabbage and onions and delicious. It's not chocolate and bananas. Okay, I'm going to get my pan heating up here and then we'll let it kind of cool down. Right before. I'll heat it up on high, but when I cook my naan, I want to cook it on a nice kind of 3 lower temperature for it. This will be for when we're ready to butter it here in a little bit. And here's our dough. I'm going to get my thing to cut it and roll it out. Did I put it over here? It's right over here. I was like, I remembered getting it out. So we're gonna make 4 kind of naan-wiches for this one. These are big, so I could actually, maybe last time I actually did them a little bigger, so I might do 6 because they were a little big last time. But this dough, this makes a good amount on here. So I'm gonna just slice it up here, and then we'll kind of give each one a little bit of a nod, a knead, not a nod. Just when you're not rolling it out, just kind of keep it under there. That's just going to keep it hydrated so it doesn't dry on the outside, which will just make it a little bit easier to work with. Now, this is one, I've been asked, oh, can you roll them all out, and then put them in? The only problem is if you roll them all out, the thing is you get, it will retract in. So you'll end up having to do an extra little roll on them. You want to roll these out fairly thin.
And you get this question a lot. Is there a good substitute for the sourdough discard, or do you find that necessary?
This, honestly, I have made the recipe without sourdough discard, and it's just not as good. So this is not one that you can really sub in for it. And so I really find that it is. There's several like naan recipes out there that use like yeast and everything like that. But that sourdough discard adds a flavor and a softness to this recipe that is just so good for it.
Marianne said chicken.
Well, thank you, Marianne. We appreciate that. Okay, I've got my first one rolled out here again, nice and thin because it's going to puff up and it's going to be thicker. So if you've had naan before it gets thicker, you need to roll it out thin. It will definitely get thicker here. Okay, I've got my onions, good, nice little saute marks on them, just like you would, think about fajitas or if you're doing it on a grill. We're going to add in our peppers. Get these kind of heating up here. Gorgeous. We'll let these saute up for just a second. I'm going to add in some chopped garlic, and then I have a zucchini, and that will be kind of our little veggies that we can stuff inside our naan, which to go with it, I also have some arugula on there. And then we will make a little tzatziki sauce as well. I'm using some fresh lemon juice, dill, cream, parsley, and diced up baby cucumbers to give a nice little fresh little base to it. To add some nice flavors. And then we'll season up our meat. And kind of similar to how we did our meat yesterday, where we did a really quick saute on it. We did Asian flavors yesterday. We're going to do some Greek seasoning and spices on it. And then we'll do a saute on it, cook it to a nice medium rare to keep it nice and tender. It's a great way to use stew meat that is not in a stew, especially now that you have this summer kind of warm weather coming. Today it's getting up to like 78 here, and it is nice and toasty, and I've been working outside in the garden. And so it's like, not really craving soups right now. I want nice kind of summer food.
Rondia, thank you.
Well, thank you, Rondia. We appreciate that. Give this a nice little toss. Let that garlic heat up for a second. I'm going to turn my pan down to about a 6 now on there. And then let's see how our skillet's almost nice and warm, so we can drop our one on here. I've got a nice good zucchini here. Take the top and bottom off. And then because this is going to go inside our little naan, I'm actually going to cut it into quarters so that we'll have little, quarter pieces of it so that they're not super big and awkward to eat. But I like to have, when I, work with the zucchini, I like to keep a little bit of skin on each piece. I find that it holds together a lot better than, doing the dice up where you, cut it up into strips to put it in there. And those middle pieces don't have any skin. We'll throw this in here to saute. And then we'll put our naan on, and then we're going to get our cookies because it's been about 10 minutes of chilling. We'll pop those cookies in the oven for that. Get our veggies here. Give them a good little stir. Beautiful. Coat them up. We'll season these two at the very end as well. Give them a little bit of Greek seasoning and some garlic, salt, and onion powder so that they have some great flavor. Okay, our skillet is nice and hot here. I'm going to turn it down to about a 3-ish because you don't want it to cook too high. I've got my naan here. It's nice and thin. We're going to lay it on our skillet, nice and a dry skillet. You don't want it on a wet skillet or like with butter or oil. We have that oil already in our dough. We use the 4th cup of oil, so that's going to help keep it and protect it, but a dry skillet to cook it on here. Let's go grab our cookies out of the oven. We'll pop them or out of the refrigerator and we'll pop them into the oven. So they've had their good little time to chill up here. Here we go. And we're going to bake these for about 9 minutes at 375. Set my timer. Actually remember to set my timer today. And then we'll be ready to grab those off here in a little bit. While we're waiting for those to kind of cook up, let's get our meat seasoned so that we'll be ready to saute off. Then we'll whip up our frosting to go inside our Oreos, which won't take us very long. Frosting's such an easy thing to make for this. I'm going to just do a quick little slide around here. Pull this guy up here. So this again is this is a pound of stew meat from Butcher Box that I just, defrosted. I will say it's really good quality meat. It has great flavor to it. So we're going to take it out here. I'm going to use my kitchen shears to snip up any pieces that are too big because I find that a lot of times stew meat comes in pretty big chunks like this, which is going to be too big to eat. But I'll just cut it up into a smaller bite-sized piece. And you don't want your pieces to be too small because you want to be able to have that nice, good inside to be a nice, like medium rare for it. And I will say with stew meat, you typically have a variety of cuts of meat in there. So it's really whatever the butcher has kind of leftover scraps of like their roasts that they've trimmed up. That's what goes into your stew meat collection. So you can get some really great pieces of meat. You can also get some of the cheaper ones. But for the most part, it's a good collection of it, which is why it's always great to have in stews because you can stew it a long time and that then doesn't vary so much for how long you're going to cook it. But I like to cook it for a nice, good sear on each side to give it a good medium rare. And then just cut some of these bigger pieces down into more bite-sized pieces that we can then put inside our little naan. I'm going to spread it out, and then we'll be ready to season these up. Just give my hands a quick rinse. And then I'm going to check my naan over here, see if it's ready for flipping yet. Not quite. Our seasoning on our meat here, I'm going to use some Greek Freak, which is just kind of like, think about your Italian seasoning. This is like a Greek seasoning on there. Just a nice blend. It's a chunky blend, so the spices are pretty big size, but I love it. We're going to do a generous coating on here. That way they'll really kind of pop in the flavor. And then I'm going to use some onion powder. This is going to help dry out some of the juices on it, give it a nice good crust on it when it sears up in the pan, as well as really great savory flavors. And then some garlic salt. There we go. So we have a good amount.
Yo has a question for you.
What is for dinner tonight? We're going to have salmon for dinner tonight. I don't know how I'm going to cook it up yet, but I know the cameraman is very, very excited for salmon. He's so excited. but we will be having salmon.
We could do surf and turf.
Yeah, we could, but we're not. Here, maybe we'll see. Maybe I'll throw in something for him. We'll see. I should do like a meal, like all the things he doesn't like meal. It'd be hilarious. He'd be so hungry. There we go. We've got them. We're just going to let this kind of sit and marinate, kind of do a quick little marinate until we're ready to saute it off. I'm going to give my veggies here a quick stir. Beautiful. Lovely. We've got this nice, look at that beautiful saute marks on our zucchini here. And the trick with that is to let your zucchini and your vegetables sit on your pan without stirring it. It's similar to when you're frying up potatoes and you want that crispy edge. Don't stir it. Let it sit for a while to really get that good crispy edge. Just about here. Okay, let's whip up our frosting. This will take us no time at all. So this is going to be really simple. We're going to use a stick of butter, about 2.5 cups of powdered sugar, about 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and a pinch of salt. And that is really all you need to make it. You just whip it until it's nice and smooth and creamy for it. Let's grab my butter over here, my vanilla, and my powdered sugar. You're going to want to use room temperature butter because if your butter is cold, you'll never get it whipped. It just won't mix in well. With the powdered sugar, don't add it all in at one time because if you do, it's going to poof everywhere. Make sure you're using a little higher top ball. There we go. We've got our first half of our naan cooked up here.
Do you prefer vanilla paste or extract?
It really depends what you're going to use it for. It kind of can go for either one. For this one, it doesn't matter. Vanilla paste is lovely. It has more of that mild, less of that alcohol flavor in it, which would work really well for a frosting. But I'm always using vanilla extract for it. And so I need a little bit of the liquidity part of the vanilla extract in here. To kind of dissolve some of that sugar so it's not quite as dense. So 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract with our butter and then a pinch of salt. This is going to cut through the sweetness of it. It's about, I say like 2 pinches for it. And then we'll start with like a cup of our powdered sugar and we'll cream that in there.
You get this question quite a bit. You ever make homemade vanilla?
I have tried one time to make homemade vanilla and it didn't turn out well, but it was several years ago. And, I think it was just something I didn't have the patience for it to let it sit long enough and to do it. And I always wondered, I'm like, I wonder if I should try it again sometime. As I get older, I realize I want to make more and more things homemade. And buy less and less store-bought one because it's better for you and it tastes better on there. It's also like convenience. Okay, we've got our first kind of cup of powdered sugar mixed in here. And then we're going to add in some more, but let me move this out of the way and get ready for this next kind of part here. Let's see. These are about ready for some spices, seasonings, and then we can take them out and use them for this pan for our meat. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to add just a little bit of onion powder. About a teaspoon of garlic salt to season this up. And then we're going to add some Greek freak. A little bit of Greek freak, about a teaspoon. And then a little bit of oregano, which is already in the Greek freak, but I love oregano, so we add a bit more because it's delicious. We'll coat this up and just let it get a few seconds to kind of hit the bottom of the pan here. And then I'm going to transfer this to a bowl, and this is what we'll top inside our naan. Wonderful. I'm going to turn that off. So good. But I always wait till the very end to add my spices in there so that it doesn't stick to the bottom of my pan. Keeps it nice and kind of hydrated for that puts it on there. And then slide this over here. But you know what? Before we do that, I've got our cookies beckoning us on there. So I'm going to check this. We'll get that off. But let's go grab our cookies out of the oven so that way they can cool. And then we'll get them off because you don't want to stuff an Oreo cookie that is still hot or that frosting will melt. But these cool pretty quickly. Look beautiful. Looks like I got only one are kissing each other. I had two. You know, you never always sit there and I'm like, do I have enough apart? Do I have them enough apart? Let me grab a trivet here. Now, we'll want to take these off in you need them to cool on our tray for about 5 minutes, and then we can slide them off and let them cool. If you try to take them off right away, they're going to be too soft and you could break them. So let them cool and firm up just a little bit before you do your initial kind of pull off there. Okay, before we finish up this frosting on there, but those are our cookie part of our Oreos, and that's just half the batch of them. We have a whole nother batch, which I'll probably break up off there, but look at our gorgeous naan here. And what I like to do to keep the naan really flexible is you're just going to take your room temperature butter, you're going to rub it over the top. We'll flip it over both sides, and that's going to allow it to stay very malleable and move with you. Gives it great flavor. Okay, I'm going to roll out another one real quick. And that way I'll have this one ready to go and start cooking up. But these cookies are going to taste way better than store-bought Oreos, although, you know, everybody loves a store-bought Oreo. Those things are dangerous. Those, whenever you get them, you're just like, you just sit there and you're like, where did that whole sleeve of Oreos go? I remember when I was writing my, it wasn't my dissertation, my thesis for my master's. So it wasn't for my doctorate, it was for my master's. That was my treat, was mint Oreos. I remember at the time, Lena and Torn were young, and I had taken a week off from work from teaching, and I was like, they'll be at school and I can write there. And they got the norovirus, which is like the worst stomach virus you can get. So I had them home and I was like, I've got to get this thesis written. I've got to defend it and get ready, you know, because I'm going to graduate soon. And I just remember, and that was my reward, was mint Oreos. Like, every page you write, you get a mint Oreo.
Judy sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. Okay. I've got my naan here fairly rolled out. They're never perfect circles on there, but I'll just stretch it a little bit when I put it here. There we go. Kind of like a circle oblong there. Beautiful, beautiful. Perfect. Let that cook up here. Let me get the rest of these veggies out. We'll finish up our frosting. Get our meat cooking off, make our tzatziki sauce, and then we can stuff some Oreos here. The trick is hopefully the Oreos don't go faster than the time you make them, but they'll be delicious. A little tickle. Okay, we're going to use this same pan to cook off our meat. We have those little drippings in there, so just makes one less dish. But these will be our lovely vegetables to go inside our little naan-wiches. There we go.
Yeah, question. Is the Oreo recipe going to be posted later?
I definitely think I'm going to make it into a recipe card, and then maybe in our cookbook. We'll have to see. I'm going to steal the cameraman's drink. There we go. I was looking around and I'm like, I don't have a drink out here. Let's steal it. I should take more. We're very protective of our drinks on there. I have a drink, my Stanley, and I always call it the community Stanley because everybody still sips out of my drink all the time.
Mary sent you a gift.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. Now let's get this oil heating up to cook off our meat for it. Then let's finish up our frosting and get this going.
And Rondia, since you know.
Well, thank you, Rondia.
You notice it?
I think so. I'm just gonna steal this. This is cherry limeade. Helps if I don't drink it down the wrong pipe. Okay. We put in our frosting here, we have a cup in it. We still need to add a cup and a half more of our powdered sugar for this. Now, I will say, if you don't like an overly sweet base to your, Oreos, you can always add a little bit less and kind of get there. But for, how they have it's a really dense base in an Oreo one. So this is going to be a slightly denser frosting, not as light and fluffy as my buttercream, because it is holding that kind of cookie base together. But a little goes a long way. You don't need a whole lot in each cookie. And contrary to what the cameraman thinks, it is not marshmallow fluff. Okay. And you can see we've got this nice little base going here. I'm just going to add a little bit more. We just need about a half a cup more to get to it. And then I think my pan over there will be nice and hot to drop our meat in there for this, so we can sear it off on both sides. So before I mix that, I'm going to get our meat dropped off here. So this is our Butcher Box stew meat that I seasoned up with Greek Freak, some onion powder, garlic salt, and a little bit of oregano. There we go. That was the last thing. We're going to sear it off in here. I'm going to put each kind of piece on. Make sure you have, each piece gets its own little spot on your pan so that you get that good sear. Now the trick is the first round will take longer than the second, like when you flip it over. You just don't want to overcook it, because stew meat, while you overcooking it, will make it tough unless you want to stew it for hours, which will make it tender again. If you do this, you want to sear it to like a nice, lovely, I love it at a medium rare where it's still got some nice pink in the inside of it. And tuck all of these guys in here. You'll know it's ready to flip is when you start to see a brown ring form up over the sides. So it's more of a visual cue than a timing cue, because we do have some cut at different sizes. They are slightly different cuts of meat. So just visually look at it and know, okay, I need to flip this one over and that one. And they roughly need to be all flipped around the same time when you get it in there. Let's get that guy there. We're going to whip this up. Get our last bit of our frosting made for our Oreos. Now, again, our Oreos have a lighter brown color because we use just regular cocoa powder. But if you really want that black color with the traditional Oreo, you have to get the black Oreo, or not the black cocoa powder, which gives you those really dark ones. But it's really cool, especially if you want to make one of those like devil's food cakes, or one of those ones made with really that dark color. That's what you got to use. Okay, so you can see we've got a really thick frosting here to go inside our Oreos. I'm going to grab a little spatula. That way I can kind of mix it around too. But it needs to be not light and fluffy, but it needs to be thick and dense for it. Oh, thank you. I'm going to take them off, let them cool. You really want one right now? Okay. The cameraman wants to eat one. They're not cooled completely, but we'll give him here a small amount because you'll push it through. And now I guess you can do double stuffed if you want, but he's very, very eager for his cookie. Now you want to let them cool completely because they'll firm up more once they've cooled a little bit longer, and then on there. But What does the cameraman say? Are they delicious? Okay, let me grab. That way I can pop my cookies off on here to cool the underbelly of them, because that is what we need. Why is this one? Because they'll stay warm. This also allows them to get a little bit crispier to get that natural kind of crunch form. I will say these last well for about 2 to 3 days, if they can make it that long. I will say they'll probably be gone pretty quickly for it. Okay. I'll let the cameraman move the rest of those over on there. I'm going to flip this meat over now that we've got a great sear on it. Beautiful. And you can see where you get this nice little ring forming up around it. We'll do it, and then we're going to let it sear off on the other side. And the other side takes about a minute or so. It's really just enough to kind of cook that edge, but not too long, because, again, you want it to be really tender. And this meat will sit for a minute or two to seal in those juices, which will continue cooking it. So, again, you don't want it to overcook either. Get that on there. I'm going to grab a little bit of a bowl for this, and then I'm going to grab a bowl to make our tzatziki sauce. Oops. Because we're just about ready to serve up here in just a second. I got to build a couple of my Oreos, but we're getting on the final rounds here. Beautiful. Okay. So you've just seared it off on the next side, and then you're just going to want it to sit for about 5 minutes to continue that medium rare cooking inside to get it just beautiful. The trick is not to overcook it, because overcooking will make it tough and not tender. Beautiful. Okay, so got that sitting right there. And it's going to stay hot for everything because that was nice and toasty and warm. Okay, let's get our sauce made up, and then we will get our naan kind of ready. I'm going to take this out of the way since I'll use that for my next round of cookies. After I say goodbye, let's check this guy out. Gorgeous. So we've got this guy ready. I'm going to add a little bit of butter here. Again, this helps keep that pliability, that movement when you go to fold it up into your sandwich. So we have that. Let me roll out another one. That way I always have one going for it. My kids love these. These are great if you just, like, a lot of times I make a big batch and then we have extra. The rule in my house is when I make naan is that I must have hummus, because they love to dip this in hummus. My kids do. It's like, if I don't have hummus, it's like I've offended them deeply. It is so good. And we use this in place of pita bread, because we've just found that this is just so flavorful and tender and soft and fluffy. You can do it. Sometimes I'll make it like naan burgers, where I'll make them like little circles, and then we'll make like a lamb burger with it. Or you can do little naan dippers, little small ones that you can like easily dip into your hummus.
Do you ever make your own hummus?
I do. I actually have made, I used to make my hummus a lot more when the kids were younger. And then I've now, honestly, it's been like, you get the Costco, like those little tub things. And I always put that in their lunches. And I was like, oh, I should make some more, especially kind of during the summer when you have it. But let's get this sauce whipped up real quick for this. We're going to make a tzatziki sauce. So I'm going to start off with some heavy cream. We're going to squeeze some fresh lemon juice in here. That is going to give us essentially a creme fraiche, which will give us a nice, thicker base for it. And then I'm going to add in some diced up cucumbers, some parsley, and some dill for it. But let's get this guys going. And then while that sits, then we can stuff some of our Oreos. And I think I should be able to get by with just juice from half a lemon. A little bit of lemon juice will go a long way. And that way Evie can have half a lemon when she gets home. She loves fresh lemons. Don't mix it in yet. Let that juice sit right on top. I've got a baby cucumber here. So we're going to kind of take the top and bottom off of that. And then you're just going to mince it up nice and kind of small, little kind of cubed pieces of it. And then we'll throw this in there. That's going to give it a nice little bit of a chunk to the sauce, a little bit of a texture, which will be lovely. So apparently I missed that whole little section. We'll add that in here. And we'll mix that in just a second. We'll stir it all together, but we're going to sit it there. I've got some fresh parsley. And then if you have fresh dill, that's great. I don't have any fresh dill, so I'm going to use dried dill. Just with dried dill, you need to use a little bit less dill than you would with fresh dill, because it can get pretty strong in that flavor there. Mince up our parsley. You could also throw in some basil here if you wanted to. Get that right there. And then we're going to add in a little bit of our dill here, about just a little bit, half a teaspoon.
You have a question. Do you like cilantro, and do you ever use it?
I do love cilantro. I use it when I do a lot of like fresh Mexican food. So I do love it. Not everyone in my family loves it, but I love it. We're going to do a good amount of some garlic salt here, about a teaspoon or so. Sprinkle that over the top. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of onion powder for this, about a teaspoon. And then I'm going to get a spoon. We'll give this a nice mix. And then we'll be ready to stuff some Oreos and build our sandwich here. But as we mix it, as you can see, that fresh lemon juice is going to essentially curdle the cream to make almost like it's a creme fraiche, but it's like a fresh sour cream. Beautiful. And the last little thing I do, I want to cut up real quick some tomatoes to go inside our little naan-wich. Just some thin slices. Make it nice pop of fresh, because I love tomatoes. Okay, so that will be ready for when we assemble that. I'm going to build that right over here. And then let's stuff a couple of Oreos on here. That way we have a couple to showcase for it. I'm going to grab a little spoon and a plate to put them on for this. Let's do it right over here on here. We'll grab, so I'm just going to grab a couple cookies at a time. One, I'm just going to match them up. I always try to find the ones that match up in size. That way they'll be as equal as possible. But they have cooled down now. I'm going to see if this is ready to flip real quick. Beautiful. And then you're going to just take, and this is again a nice thick piece of frosting here. So it's thicker than what you would do for a like on your cake. You're going to put it together and you squeeze it all the way around, and you've got that frosting coming out the edge. Now, if you wanted to go double stuff galore, yes, you could add a bit more for it. And that just kind of pops it through all the way around, and you've got your homemade Oreo. Now you just need a big tall glass of milk here. And instead of trying to spread it, you just put that glob in there and then you push it all the way around just like that. Okay, so we've got our base. We've got a tower of Oreos right here that we can use for an example. Let's get ready to make our lunch here. Bring this a little bit over here. Turn that down just a smidge. I'm going to open up because we're going to put some fresh arugula in our little naan-wich as well. Okay, I'm super excited for this meal. It's going to be so delicious. I love Greek food, fresh food. Okay, we're going to do it on our lovely plate here. Okay. We've got our homemade naan. It's nice and movable because we spread it with the butter. So I'm going to put it right here. Now we're going to take some of our tzatziki sauce that we made and we're going to kind of spread it on the base on here. That way we get a lot of great flavor on the base of it. I always put a little dollop on the bottom, but this way you get that flavor all the way throughout. We're going to sprinkle in a little bit of arugula, which has a lemon peppery flavor to it. Our sautéed veggies here, which is going to add great flavor. We have onions, peppers, and zucchini. And then we're going to top it with some of our Greek Freak seasoned beef stew meat that we sautéed off to a nice, lovely medium rare. I'm going to top it off with a couple slices of fresh tomatoes here. And then, again, another little dollop of our homemade tzatziki sauce, and just look at this amazing little sandwich here. It's our little naan-wich. And then at the very end, for a sweet little treat, we have our homemade Oreos made with our chocolate cookies and our homemade frosting for just a nice little copycat treat from the store. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. We've got our beef naan-wiches with our homemade Oreos, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it, so you can, check out all the things we use. I've got my stand mixer, my hand mixer, knives, cutting boards, all the different things that we use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.